Sure, people will be coming in, trickling in as we get started. I wanted to take a moment here and provide a very special thank you to our conference sponsors. I already mentioned the Victoria Gardens Cultural Center. Again, it's a fabulous facility. We are so excited to be back here for our second time. Yes, maybe they'll let us come back again. Everyone be nice. So I'm going to read a list of sponsors. Also, we are funded in part by the California Arts Council. We would like to thank our patrons, the Associated Students Incorporated of Cal State San Bernardino, Dr. Ernest and Dorothy Garcia, Bill and Gloria Harrison, the donor-advised fund at the Community Foundation, David Lawrence, the Office of the President at California State University San Bernardino, and ieshineon.com. So let's hear for them. Also supporting us at the Art Sustainer level, the Center for Management in the Creative Industries at Claremont Graduate University. And our arts advocates, the Ontario Museum of History and Art, the Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art at Chaffey College, the College of Arts and Letters at Cal State San Bernardino, Dr. Mandy Batalo and Dr. Greg Zarovnik, Karen Skiba, Ala Minute, Catherine Irvin, Sant Khalsa, Danielle G. Wallace, Stephanie McLean, Misty Burrell, Valerie Peaster, Pat and Sally Morris, and Dr. Jay Feeney, and our in-kind sponsor, Andrew Oakes of Green Acres Design. Let us thank them all. Now, I did invite my board of directors to stand up, and the only people in the room were Sant and I. Priya, is she here? Priya Jha is also on our board. She's out running around. And Patrick Hediger, I'm sure some of you have seen Patrick, is here at this space and has been our negotiator. And Stephanie McLean is one of the people you met at registration, and that's the board of directors. So having said that, I hope you had a good lunch. I hope you had an opportunity to chew more than your food. Right, and to choose some wonderful ideas. Our next panel that I'm going to bring on, come on panelists. Panel 2 is Creative Placemaking, and we're going to look at some artists and organizations creating community. Our moderator is Thomas McGovern. He is a professor in the art department at Cal State San Bernardino, and he's going to be introducing and taking care of the panel. Take it away.
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everybody. Great day to come out and participate in the idea of community and art and artists. And before we get started, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to please just sort of briefly talk about themselves so we understand who they are and what their involvement in art making and in the community is. And I'll just tell you who they are first of all. Just to my left here, this is Michael Segura, who's an artist and activist, and he's with San Bernardino Generation Now. It's a wonderful community art group. To his left is Josiah Bruni, the founder and CEO of Music Changing Lives. And to his left is Johanna Smith. She's a puppet and performance artist, and she's also a professor at Cal State San Bernardino, as I am as well. Okay, so Michael, if you would come on up and do a brief presentation about your work, please. So you go ahead and do your presentation, and when you're done with the presentation, you're ready for your video, just signal and I'll play your video.
All right, thank you. Hi everyone, good afternoon. So my name is Michael Segura, as you heard, and I'm a part of San Bernardino Generation Now. We're a movement of young people in the city trying to make it a better place, and one of those ways is through the arts. So this is our mission statement, our logo. And first off, I'd just like to say everything that we've accomplished, I haven't done it on my own. It's always been a collaborative effort. There's a lot of people involved. My friend Brandon Aguilar, referred to as VZ, he has his own brand. It's Zealous Life. And he's been a huge collaboration with Generation Now since the beginning. He's the one who branded the actual logo we have, and it's his art network and my art network and our friends that we brought in to really participate in all the art events we've had throughout the community. So our first ever mural was the Unity Wall, and it's just one of the themes that we really like to push in our community, is just, uniting. The second thing we ever done was the Hope, which sadly it was buffed by the county graffiti removal. So we had to come back and we had to paint the entire wall, no hope, to get our message across. And that's our second theme that we really want to push in our community is, we have to have hope, because without hope there's really going to be no future. And in San Bernardino you feel the apathy with a lot of the citizens there, especially in the youth. A lot of the youth want to leave our city, and we're trying to keep them there and revitalize it. So the art event we had, the first art event we had, the first festival, was Turn Up the Vote Live. We're trying to engage young people to vote. If you know San Bernardino, our voter turnout's 14% out of the registered voters, so it's really, really low. And we're trying to get more young people voting, just people in general voting. And so we had some artists there painting. We also had music. And these were, like I said, Zealous and our art network. And the logo right there to the vote sign, that's Zealous's logo. So we also did a Facebook, just a competition kind of, and just asked people to, write out something that's civically engaging. Most of them just did vote, but it's just engaging our community in another way that was, cost us no money at all. The next mural I was able to paint was with Elizabeth Flores, which my friend Beezy told me about. She put out a call to artists in the community that she was going to be painting this mural with the community. And so we got involved. We helped her out with layout. We did the Inspire on the corner, and we helped out with the sun, and just was there when the community was there to make sure, she had enough people watching over the kids when they're there painting and stuff like that. The next thing we did was with Cal State San Bernardino. Bryant Ferry of the Community Engagement Department. He had contacted me after we did some voter registration with them and told us about this awesome event called Coyote Care Day, which they go into the community and they do all sorts of service projects. So we were able to clean up 2 empty lots and paint some murals. And then the next thing was also with Cal State San Bernardino, but the San Bernardino Art Jam was at our county museum. But it was with Professor Juan Delgado. Tom was also involved in getting me involved in this, and a lot of our group was involved. And it was with poetry, fine art, pretty much all the arts was touched at this event. And we're working with kids from the district, the San Bernardino School District. Our next big thing was Community Festival, which my friend actually contributed with his design skills to make us a free logo. And that's something we really do, is engage our artists in our community to, offer their talents for free. And, just contribute in that way if they don't have the money to contribute. And so this event was filled with dance, art, music, and then a ton of activities for the kids. We were able to get this mural painted there on one of the bathrooms. We had this mural painted, which the kids really loved. And then my friend was painting this mural, and while he was there was a bunch of kids there playing at the park, and so I was just hanging out there, drawing with them. And that's something that really happens a lot when you're out there in the community painting. The community comes and, they want to get involved, or they just want to hang out and talk, and it's really a great time to engage the community and, just mentorship in a sense. We should always be mentoring if we can. And then the next mural we got to paint was with IPS, Institute for Public Strategies, and they were doing a burn project. It was the worst area in San Bernardino. And so they got us involved. They wanted us to paint a mural with 10 high school youth. They're from Clues Charter School, so we got to teach them. We had a few classes, and then we let them get to painting. They did the background, and we just did their quote that they wanted over it. And then the community helped us with the lower wall. So there's a few kids from the community that really wanted to paint, some really young kids. And so we got them involved, and so far this mural hasn't been touched, and it's in a really bad area, supposedly. So it just shows that when you engage the community, you know, they take care of their area and they take pride in it. Then our next biggest project that we've ever had was Second Lake Mural Project. We painted almost the entire park. We had about 26 artists, and then including the community that came out and paint, about 46, 60 people came out. So it was a lot of artists and a lot of days that it took to get this project done. And then the last project I had worked on was this wall at Humane Society. And we did that with Critter Camp, which was a bunch of young ones. They wanted to teach them about kindness, helping your neighbor. So we just had this quote, and we let them do the paw prints, and we just did the background. So they all got to contribute, and we had them collaborate with each other. So there's like 3 kids on each paw print. So it was a really good project, and that's it for all the art we've been doing so far, and he's going to play a video. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Greenleaf. I'm a part of San Bernardino Generation Now. Generation Now is a group that's millennial-based that come together and volunteer to make the community a better place. We seek out people that care, that have a good heart, that want to change things. We're at Seacom Park. The maintenance hasn't really been maintained over the last couple of years. It's a beautiful park, and it's just mistreated. What San Bernardino Generation Now has actively done in this park is trash cleanup, cleaning out the lake, and a lot of graffiti removal. We have local artists coming out and doing murals on the bathrooms and on some of the buildings with the theme of Aspire. We want the community to aspire to be something more than what we are right now.
Just like a staple in San Bernardino. So now I'm down here painting it, I clean it up a little bit. I just think it's super cool, it's neat to me, and I just love to paint.
There's not many opportunities like this, especially from the city. It's pretty awesome.
When people come out and actually help and get involved, it just changes their perspective. They see that they're actually needed, that this is a place for them to where they can come and help out a community, kind of get back on its feet. I hope that we inspire people to get out and make the changes on their own. I think that our work here is just started.
That's great. Thanks so much. Thank you. I'll just let you know that Kim Stringfellow is here with us as well. Kim is an artist and an educator and a recent Guggenheim Fellow. So thanks so much for being able to join us, Kim. Okay, next we'll go to Josiah Bruni. So come on up, Josiah. And okay, there she is. Thank you.
Good afternoon. How you guys doing? Oh, come on. My 5th graders get louder than that. How you guys doing today? That's what I'm talking about. I'm Josiah Brody from Music Changing Lives. Thank you guys for allowing me to come and be a part of this great panel. Most of you know us, and most of you that don't know or got about to know who we are. I founded this organization back in 1998 with the concept of teaching individuals to stand out through music. I was a promoter at the time working for my older brother, and I said, if we come up with a concept to open up the studio for children, we could possibly end some of the dropout rate issues we have, the crime and the violence, by teaching them how to become entrepreneurs at what they do. We've now graciously been awarded the opportunity to open our first center at the Redlands Community Center, where our mission is basically just what I said, teaching kids to have the highest quality of music and art programs and to live beyond their current realities. We've now just partnered in 2012 with the Moreno Valley School District as well, and brought out a concept entitled the Changing Lives Showcase, where we do a performance art competition and children compete to see who are the best at music and art throughout their region. So our history, as I said, it started way back in 1998 out of our home studio. I would just allow kids to come in and record for free. It was a process where I thought and I believe that if I give these kids an opportunity to speak themselves in their voice and use their voice, we can teach them how to become entrepreneurs and use it properly. And thus far it's been working, and we've outgrown that home Once my mom, I believe she's in the stage. Granada, are you here? She says she's on her way. She was studying traffic, but when she does arrive, it was my mother that seen what we were doing. She came into my home and seen that I had turned a 5-bedroom home into a basic community center. And at the time, you know, I thought that was the greatest thing in the world to do, but she reminded me I wasn't the federal government once my bills started coming in. After that, like I said, we were blessed to open up our first studio inside the Redlands Community Center. If you ever get a chance, please stop by. We're right there on Lagonia in Washington. And we took 2, they were showers, they were like gym lockers, and I turned them into a beautiful state-of-the-art studio now. Literally where kids come Monday through Friday, and they're able to now record, produce, mix, master. We've also built an art lab there where kids are doing silk screens, their own t-shirts, hats, and all forms of media of arts. Some of our other stats, we've also expanded to 2 other community center sites since then. We're now opening a facility in Fontana and San Bernardino. We have now 4 school sites that we teach on throughout Moreno Valley, and I have 3 charter schools that I teach at as well with our programs. The need. Most of you know in the arts field, the first thing to go was arts and sports. And not everyone is talented enough to be a rocket scientist or a lawyer or a doctor, so we felt the need to come through and fill that void. Again, we came and said we want to offer an offset of cheap, not cheap, but low-priced, high-quality art programs that people could afford, to where it didn't feel like another bill or a payment that you had to send your child to. So our program fees are only $20 a month. If a kid can't afford that, we reduce it to $10 a month. If they can't afford that, we say, give me 5 hours of community service, and you're able to come for free. Our after-school program that's here now, our recent one that we're talking about on this one, is a mobile studio concept. And what you see here on the left is, instead of me going to city and saying, let me keep building these studios and have kids come, I said, what if I took the studio to them and put it right on their high school or their elementary campus? And so I created a 21-week program that's entitled the Changing Lives Showcase. And kids are able to come to this program right there on their school, after school, free of charge, as long as they keep a 2.5 GPA and complete a 5-hour community service project. Now, they don't have to automatically come in with that high GPA. We work with them. So most of our students are coming in failing, and then through our partnership with UCR, we now have about 40 college students that come in and teach them and tutor them Monday through Friday as well to help boost up their grade point averages. And all this is free of charge to the kids. The program, as we said too, is built on, 1, reducing our community's dropout rate, but 2, really teaching our kids to become entrepreneurs and how to defend and sell their own products. So in addition to the kids coming and hanging out with us and building up their futures, we've also, with our federal work studies students, been able to create a workforce development where the students create their own music, we help them package it. We now have students traveling all over the world performing and selling their music. One student I love to share, his name is Curtis Brooks. This young gentleman, as I said, he came in earlier with all Fs and didn't know how to read music or anything, but he could play from just his ear any song you ever put before him. Once we taught him to sit down, study for 3 hours a day, and actually read music, the kid has been working with Ricky Larson, which is Michael Jackson's ex-guitarist, and several other musicians as well. So it's become very financially stable for the kids. One of the student testimonials that I'd like to share is from one of our students, that she was just an artist and now she's gone on to attend Cal Poly, and I'll read just a brief point of her testimonial. One of her favorite authors is Henry Royce. Once stated, "Take the best that exists and make it better. If it doesn't exist, design it." In my opinion, this quote summarizes what happens in music changing lives on a daily. We take what kids don't have and we teach them how to basically live beyond their current reality. Most of our students that we worked with would never be able to afford the type studio that we provide for them, or the art materials for that matter that we give them. There's no fee for a kid to bring in the canvas, the paint, anything of that nature. We raise 100% of that and tell the kids just come and become a part of that creative space. Now I'd like to thank most of our program partners at this time, because without partners and collaborations, none of this would be true, or our vision would still just be that, a vision. One is Congressman Takano, Senator Richard Roth, Assemblymember Jose Medina, Councilman John Harris was the first to believe in the program and gave us our first home at the community center. Congresswoman Bono Mack, she was the first Congresswoman to get behind us as well and help us learn what federal dollars meant. The city of Redlands for giving us our first place to teach kids. The Redlands Police Department for the community policing that we do. The city of Moreno Valley for now believing in us, and we're now this year opening up to be able to go into 43 school sites with that district. Moreno Valley Unified School District, the city of Fontana, Community Action Partnership, UCR, University of Redlands, and the Art Institute. Without these people here, again, my vision would still be in a home, and I'd be paying astronomical dollars to keep it going. Our favorite quote is this, and I don't know who wrote it, so if somebody does, please tell me. It says, "No one can do everything, but everyone can do something." And if you live by that, you'll be able to create high aspiration, and anything you put your mind to, you'll be able to achieve. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much, and I hope you give it a nice time.
Thanks, Casal. A lot of community there, buddy. Okay, let's go to Johanna Smith. And Johanna, as I mentioned, is a puppet and performance artist. She's also a colleague of mine at California State University, San Bernardino.
Okay. I always like to start with something that sounds like a confession. I am a puppeteer, and it's an interesting field to be in, but my degree is actually in children's theater, so I'm not only a puppet artist, I'm an artist who works with young people on purpose. Or as I like to tell people in academies, I sit at the crossroads of multiple marginalizations. Because nobody takes puppetry seriously, nobody takes children seriously, and I don't take myself seriously. So the whole combination tends to be ruinous, but effective in collaborating with the community. And since I can't do anything without showing a puppet, I have the puppet that's in that picture right there. But there's a story. Is this on? There's a story with this puppet, just like there's a story with everything. I thought I'd talk about what it's like to be positioned as an artist and somebody who intentionally, you're not looking at me at all, are you? You're just like, there's a fuzzy thing. But as someone who actually works with the community, and this puppet is one example of a partnership that I started. And my theme for this talk is collaborating with the community you have is creating the community you want. And this puppet emerged with a partnership with a group called Trash for Teaching. And they collect cast-off industrial waste and clean it up, organize it, and give it to teachers to use as art supplies in their classroom. So they basically gave me a giant bag of this stuff, which is unspun yarn that garment district manufacturer didn't want anymore, was the wrong color. And so they were going to throw away this huge bunch of cool stuff. So it turns out you can felt with it, and it's actually pretty cool. So this is made out of old socks, and I just felted the roving into it, which is what that stuff is called. But it also kind of shows my philosophy of puppetry, which is I don't like to spend money, ever, which makes me a good community collaborator. And I like to use free stuff that people give me. So the two projects I'm going to show you, I try to do that as much as possible just as an artist, as my philosophy. But I also tried really hard to collaborate with the community, especially on this first project, and it put me in an interesting relationship with the community. So I thought I'd start with this one. The first thing I want to talk about is the Lytle Creek story. This was the promotional poster used for it. And as you can see, it's pretty complicated. There's a lot going on in that picture. But I got a call from somebody on the campus from the Water Resources Institute, and our former speaker was talking about considering what you had to offer as currency. I never thought I had currency, but evidently someone wanted me to actually provide something. I was amazed. And they said, could you do a puppet show for us? And I said, of course. And then they told me about the consortium of people involved in this project. So the project was called Lytle is Vital. And look at all these collaborators. They're not in the arts at all. I just thought this was an extraordinary opportunity. CalFed Watershed Program, the Water Resources Institute and partners, the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District, Santa Ana Watershed Association, California Resources Connection, Inc., Urban Semelius, Lytle Creek Fire Safe Council, and the U.S. Forest Service. So all of those people, just so you know, wanted to tell me how to make a puppet show. Okay? So this gets back to currency. Is when I actually stood up and said, you know what, I'm the artist, and there's some things that I just do the way I do them, and you guys can tell me if it works for you or not, but at least let me show you, right? So I put together this show, and it turned out to be pretty silly. So I used Muppet-style puppets, and almost all of the puppets were made out of something found or recycled. And we used the puppets to tell a story in absolutely no words. It was only music and movement and some gibberish to tell a story of taking care of the watershed. So I took some students with me. We went up to the Lytle Creek watershed. We checked it out. We explored. We did all this fun stuff. And then once we got the show together, all of those partners went, oh yeah, that's what I would have done. Okay, so it just kind of proves a point. Like, you are the artist. You are in control of your art. You should own it. Does that make sense? And stand up for yourself. But here's what happened. We got all sorts of kids coming. We performed all over the place. These were Cal State students who are performing the puppets, and we toured everywhere. I even got to make, those are puppet bacteria. You can't really tell them very well. I mean, who else would get that chance? Could you make some puppet bacteria showing E. coli? Yes. Yes, I can. I have some in my office. If anyone's at Cal State, I'll show you them. But then here's a funny thing that happened. That's me in the middle there with some of my students. They asked us to do a video of it. And here's where things got complicated. So we did take the show and make it into a video, but this is where I sort of lost control as an artist. Does that make sense? So the video was supposed to be finished. I collaborated with C. Rod Metz from Cal State as my videographer, and we put together a beautiful, I thought, video version with no words, right, to carry on the spirit of the original show. Partly because, I mean, who was going to be the audience? People who might not necessarily speak English, right? So why include words at all? And it got held up, and it will never be released because all the partners couldn't agree with the narration that would go over it. I know. So I have a copy of it, a bootleg copy, if anyone would like to see. A really cool thing. So I'm just trying to show that sometimes things work out great. Like the live show was fantastic. Sometimes you put a lot of heart and soul into something, and you're stuck. So I want to talk about another project. Our speaker also talked about revealing, working with the community to reveal what's already there. I also feel like, as an academic, I have access to tools that children don't have. And so I chose a play called Black Butterfly. It has no puppets in it whatsoever. And it's the first thing I've done at Cal State without puppets, because it's about East LA, and it was written by this guy, Luis Alfaro. If you guys don't know Luis Alfaro's work, please look him up. He is unbelievable. He took the writing of a bunch of little girls from East LA and put it together into a show of monologues, and it's probably the best children's theater piece I've ever seen or read or had anything to do with. And so luckily my department was very supportive and said, okay, go do this. But the idea behind it is that it's little girls telling the truth about their lives. And I have Cal State students, you can see my beautiful girls there. They got to play characters that were close to their age and absolutely close to their ethnicity. So they got to speak their truth, does that make sense? In a beautiful, poetic way that was crafted by a master artist. Does that make sense? This playwright is incredibly good. So I wasn't just throwing them in and saying, tell a story. I was like, here is how to tell a story. Does that make sense? I was choosing beautiful art for them to do. And then we got an article in the paper. I'm going to just skip through this because we don't have time, but I just thought one great quote from the show is, I can't wait to get older so my bra and panties can match. Just so good, so good. Okay, so here's what it's about, though. It's sketches about growing up in poor Hispanic neighborhoods and being raised by single parents who only speak Spanish. Include universal adolescent girl themes swirling around elevated hormones, self-righteous venting, and painful introspection. And as you can see from looking at me, I'm not from East LA. I'm a white girl from Ohio, okay? But I also wanted to make a point that, yes, I'm a white girl from Ohio, but I do have things to bring to the table, tools to share that can elevate the discourse of the theater that we're making. Does that make sense? So here's my beautiful girls. We did performances on the main stage at CSUSB, and we took it out to Palm Desert campus, so they performed in 2 beautiful theaters. But the best thing, you can see my set has lots of objects, so, oops, what happened? I will now pantomime the show. Okay. You don't need to see that. Okay, where's the puppet? I wanted to show you the school audiences. That's the only big thing. I have some writing that the girls did. The shows were toured to schools all over the Inland Empire, and the best thing is we got fan mail. Oh, there we go. Okay. We got it way down here. Oh, wait. La 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 la, it's like time travel. La 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 la. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, just so you can see all the kids that came. I do like to talk about the reach of theater. If you haven't thought about doing children's theater or supporting children's theater, look at all the stuff we got to do. These are all the schools from the Palm Desert area. We went to all these places. Here's what the girls looked like in some of the spaces they had to perform in, like they had to perform in gym and cafetoriums. But it doesn't matter, gym and cafetorium or not. Does everybody get, like, Luis Alfaro's words worked? Does that make sense? It was a play about his words. And so those words were heard. And you get to hear wonderful things that the kids who watched the show wrote letters like crazy to the girls. Thank you for taking your time to do this play. I thought the play was perfect. It made me cry and made me think how I relate to it. You're all very pretty, and I hope all of you achieve your goals. You are all beautiful black butterflies. And that's just one out of like hundreds. And as the last sentence on this one is thank you so much for acting out that play for us. It was very inspiring. You made me feel like I could do anything. You guys are also definitely boosted my confidence to go to college. Because just think, how many of these kids see themselves on stage? Almost never, right? So I also feel like as an academic, someone with access to tools, I have an obligation to give them the hope that they can be artists too. And it also became a very popular hashtag for a while. You can see this little boy, he took all these pictures and he was trying to convince people that he was dating one of the girls. It was pretty funny. But basically, we embraced the effect that this had on young people. We let them take selfies with the cast afterwards. We let them interact. And that's what, again, made it such a special experience. So 2 very different experiences with the community, but both times my artistic place was examined. So does it make sense? So as coming in as the artist. So I thought I'd share those 2 with you.
Thank you so much, John. Got one more short PowerPoint, and then we're going to go to Kim's website.
Okay. You don't want me up yet?
Not yet. Slightly complicated text stuff here, so I'll just give you a little bit of mine. Okay, so my name's Thomas McGovern. I'm a photographer, a writer, and I edit a magazine called Dot Photozine that I started a few years ago, and of course I'm an art professor at Cal State San Bernardino. I've had numerous projects that I've done that I've been fortunate enough to have published. Projects about community and about my involvement as a photographer. The upper left one is Bearing Witness to AIDS. That was a 10-year project on the AIDS crisis. And the reason I started making those pictures was that in 1986, I heard about all these good friends of mine from Washington, D.C. that had died of AIDS. I lived with a couple of gay men, and they were like big brothers to me. And when I left and I went to New York, we sort of lost touch. And then through the grapevine, I heard that they had all died. And of course, this was as the scourge of AIDS was becoming increasingly prevalent, and of course there was such stigma about what it was and who had it and how did you get it. And so I decided for that point I had to really start making pictures about the crisis, and started out doing portraits and interviews of people with AIDS, and expanded that to cover the cultural implications, that is political actions in healthcare, memorials, funerals, and fundraisers. Up on the upper right-hand side, after I got to San Bernardino, one day I was riding my bike up E Street, and I saw this funky storefront that said School of School of Hard Knocks, professional wrestling training. And like a lot of things in San Bernardino, you figure it closed a long time ago. Well, I heard this noise and I went around to the back and there was this gym. There was like a ring, a wrestling ring, squeezed into this little storefront with about a dozen or so young men and women training to be pro wrestlers of all things, with a former, pro wrestler who'd been on TV. And then for 5 years, I started photographing them. Oh, by the way, when I walked in the door, I said, I'm a photographer, and they grabbed me and dragged me in. And that started the next 5 years of hanging out with them, going to matches and their practice sessions, and photographing the men and women of the School of Hard Knocks of San Bernardino. And just like with my AIDS work, I've included interviews in that book. A little bit of a different approach. It wasn't a traditional documentary in that I asked everyone when I photographed them to please be in character. I only wanted to see this crazy character you've created, and yet when I did the interviews, I asked them to tell me about their real lives and what motivated them. Just below that is a book called Amazing Grace, and that was for 6 months. I was able to amazingly hang out with these 2 small African-American evangelical churches in Brooklyn. And it was a very wonderful, incredible experience. I'm not a spiritual person. I don't go to church. And yet then I was welcomed into these 2 deeply religious communities. And of course, a big racial divide, so it would seem. This was also during a particularly tense time in racial relations in Brooklyn, New York, where numerous African-American men had been basically killed by white mobs. And so the idea of this white kid going in to take pictures seemed particularly daunting. And yet, of course, I was immediately moved by the incredible generosity and love and spiritualism that the congregants had. And then my most recent publication is Vital Signs, which I was very fortunate to work with the great poet Juan Delgado. And I was photographing hand-painted signs and murals throughout the Inland Empire, mostly in San Bernardino. And we coupled my photographs with Juan Delgado's wonderful poetry about the immigrant experience. And so those were some of the projects I've done most recently. In 2011, I founded Dot Photozine, which is a magazine of photography that is to be able to share the great work that our students do, Of course, Professor Sant Carlson's here in the room too. She's has worked at San Bernardino for many, many, many years and has trained and educated so many of our fine photography students. And I came in 2000 to be able to continue that tradition. And of course, we have these excellent part-timers, adjunct professors that work with us. And you just know that you need to be able to get that stuff out there. You see all this great work and you want to say, Don, I want to share this. I want to be able to show people what our students are doing, as well as to be able to let people know there's a venue for you. There's a place where you can come and discover the artist within you, to be able to make your photographs, and then, of course, to hopefully through the magazine and the website to be able to share it and get it out there a little bit. And so that was another project I've been deeply involved in. Community-based art projects. One of the first ones, I was very fortunate, Juan and I again were invited by Dottie Garcia, who's the president of the San Bernardino Fine Arts Commission. This summer, she invited us to submit a proposal, which was then accepted, where we did a public art project in an empty storefront down on 5th Street in San Bernardino. And Greg Villanueva, who's the owner of the building, was very generous and let us take over his windows, where we put big photographs with poetry in it. We had a little explanation about what we were trying to do, wanted to celebrate our city, and we're inviting people to come by and also celebrate it. One little funny part of all that project was that there was some couple of broken windows, so we had plywood over them. So I put these posters up on this plywood on the outside, and if I would drive by every single day to make sure that they were okay or hadn't been defaced, to make sure it looked good, because big concern, don't want it to look trashy. Well, every day when I would drive by, I was secretly hoping someone would be writing on it or graffitiizing in it or say, you stink or whatever, and I would pull those down. I would hope. I imagine I would have this stack of these defaced posters. Not one of them ever got defaced, so I guess it showed some sort of respect that the community had for what we were doing, but I did sort of secretly hope we would have some kind of messiness that we could play with there. My current project that I'm working on, 2 projects right now in the community. One is called Swap Meet. This is San Bernardino. We have a fabulous swap meet every Sunday in the National Orange Show, and I have an exhibition of that work up right now. Tomorrow will be the last day at the National Orange Show Art Gallery in downtown San Bernardino. And then the Anderson School for students with special needs. Just out of the blue, they contacted the university. My chair sent it to me. And I started photographing there last year, both just to be able to give them pictures, but of course, as an artist, I'm increasingly interested in how can I possibly start to represent these individuals, young people who have various disabilities, some as mild as I dare say is Down syndrome, where people can take care of themselves, be able to dress themselves, to other people who are really completely disassociated from the world that you and I live in. So the challenge is, how can I make those pictures to tell us something about these young men and women, while at the same time also providing a service for the school to give them some pictures to look at. Okay. Great, so let's bring up Kim Stringfellow, and Kim, of course, is a very well-known visual artist, mostly photographer. We think of her. She does all kinds of work. She's also an educator and is a current Guggenheim Fellow. So let's get your website right over there. There you go. It is live, but the trouble is you can't see it here. You have to look up there. So if you can just see where your cursor is, there you go.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm gonna, let's see, let's get rid of this. We can open the window. Okay, let me try this again.
Hit forward key, maybe. You just put your name in. Start to
Well,
write
maybe I should just talk. Okay, I'm just going to talk since this is, I can't. Yeah, I was going to put it to kimstringfellow.com. So I work as a transmedia artist. I'm interested in issues of the built environment to cultural geography, primarily in Southern California. That's been my focus for the last 15 years. I teach at San Diego State University. I teach photography and digital media. And most of my work is disseminated on the web, which is what I was attempting to show you, was just the websites. And I'm just going to talk about several projects that I've worked on over the years. So in terms of work, I started more as a documentarian and did a project called Greetings from the Salton Sea, which is a book project. It's an exhibition, and it's a website. And that project led me to start thinking more about environmental politics, about notions of place, and culture. And it led me to a project that I was a collaboration called Invisible 5. I worked with an artist, Amy Balkin, who's up in San Francisco area, a sound artist, Tim Halber, and two nonprofits. One was Green Action. It's an environmental justice group up in the Bay Area. And Amy and I had met on a retreat. It was in Italy, and we decided to work on a project based on the I-5 corridor. And after her, she was at Stanford, and there was a presentation by the director of Green Action about environmental justice issues. We decided to create a framework around the I-5 corridor between San Francisco and Los Angeles and create an audio tour that you would experience as you drive this corridor, either from south to north, north to south. And it deals with issues of, say, toxic dumps, pesticide, cancer clusters, histories, invisible landscapes such as Tulare Dry Lake, all different types of industries, but it's through the voices of activists and people who've experienced these issues firsthand, and it gives a voice to these particular groups of people. So it was a 2 CD program. We made it so you could download it directly from the web. It was available for free. We did distribute some CDs, but we wanted to make it as easy to be able to distribute as possible. And that began my interest in this kind of audio format, which I think can be very visual, even though you're listening to something. The great thing about working with audio and working with people in the community to tell their own stories is the fact that You can do a lot of different things when you're listening to audio instead of a video documentary where you really have to be a very passive kind of audience in that situation. So, you can drive a car, you can, a lot of us listen to NPR and things like that. So you're able to listen to a creative project while you're doing something else. Perhaps walking, hiking, there's a lot of different strategies for this. So that was a pretty successful project. We received funding for that project through the Creative Work Fund, which is based up in the Bay Area. And then it led me to continue doing some audio, but I still continue doing my documentary practice. And the next project I worked on was called Jackrabbit Homestead, and that deals with these little cabins. They're out throughout the Mojave, but they're primarily in the Morongo Basin area east of 29 Palms. And they're little claim shacks that people were able to get federal land, 5 acres, during the Small Tract Act in 1938. I'm sure some of you have been out to Joshua Tree National Park and maybe even further east, and you've seen some of these abandoned shacks. What was really interesting about it, it's an underrepresented history, so it's something that there wasn't a lot out there for me to research, and I thought, great, this is a good subject for me to look into. But as I was working on the project, I realized there was a whole community of artists and creative types that were actually purchasing these abandoned properties and revitalizing them. They were making them into these new, very dynamic spaces. Sometimes they would be studios, sometimes they would be rental properties for some income. They were affordable. And as we know, a lot of artists and creative people don't have a lot of money. So it started to create this kind of community. So I was very interested in that, and that became part of the project. So I applied for a Cal Humanities California Story Fund and did another audio tour where you drive out and you can listen to the history of the Small Tract Act and Jackrabbit homesteading through a local historian and also different artists and people that have cabins out in that area. So, the type of things I'm doing are more starting to get towards a kind of social public practice. That project led me to work on a audio project, and at this point, this project that deals with the Los Angeles Aqueduct, the history from the Owens Valley perspective, was just entirely an audio project. I didn't really do much photography per se for that. That project is about an hour and a half. It's, again, funded through Cal Humanities. And it deals with the history over the last 100 years from 1913 to 2013. That was when the Los Angeles Aqueduct was constructed. It is a 233-mile conduit that brings water down to Los Angeles, and basically, along with the silver that was taken out of the mountains not too far away from that, has really built Los Angeles, including the movie industry. Silver from those mountains above Owens Valley led into Hollywood, celluloid, and that. So there's a lot of connections that Los Angeles has with this area, but it's been at a cost. It's really affected growth there. That can be a positive thing. It can be not so positive, but it's had a lot of environmental degradation. And I thought it would be great to capture an audience who's traveling along Highway 395, which is a scenic byway. How many people have gone up through Owens Valley, Mammoth, and that? So quite a few people. So the idea is you start this at the beginning, sort of the entrance of where Owens Lake is, and you listen to this history as you're taking in this landscape. And it's probably something that you'd be very surprised. It's definitely not Chinatown, which a lot of Los Angelinos seem to think is still what happened with the water. And it's actually, I think, a more compelling and more striking story, and I wish someone would do a really great Hollywood film on the subject. So, okay.
Great, okay, thank you so much, everybody. So now that we have a little understanding about who we and these artists are, let's get to a little bit of the discussion here. And so I have a specific question here. So I'm going to start with Josiah. Do you have a specific strategy or strategies for getting the community involved in your works or for generating interest and support for your community-based work? I mean, you've been successful with it. So tell us about that strategy.
So the strategy we use to bring in students for our work is we do grassroots promotion. Word of mouth is a big part of what we offer. Again, we're a music studio, so to give a kid a studio for $20 a month versus $20 or $50 an hour, it's not too hard. So they kind of run to us in droves for that piece. The hardest piece was to get the politicians in the community, like city officials, to believe that you could use art or music to truly change these kids' lives. And now that's what we've been very successful at doing, being able to have our students go and perform, say, at their events. We've had children perform for United Way worldwide. We've had them come perform for the city halls and their events. And so the children's attributes to music and art has really catapulted us as well, too, because you have something you could tangibly see change.
Great. What about you, Kim? Do you have specific strategies for getting the community involved in your works or for generating that interest and support?
Well, you know, since I'm working on the web, I've tried strategies of actually getting people through comments and things to work that way, but I find that more direct interaction, and that means spending a lot of time during the research phase of getting to know the community. You have to be invested in the community for them to trust you, especially on some of the more political issues that I work on. So that takes time. You know, that you can't sort of just come in and leave, you know, on Monday, you know, spend a weekend. It requires oftentimes several trips of just talking with people in that, and then they become collaborators within the project itself. So, but my projects are, I think, less in the way that these wonderful projects are working so directly with people, bringing them in. I'm providing a voice for the community through the structure of the project.
Yeah, great, thanks. And what about you, Michael? So do you guys, I mean, he's with Generation Now, and you know, this is a whole group of young people, and you've been, in my mind, you've been very effective in San Bernardino, and which I have to wonder something like, how are you able to paint all those murals when the city seems to hate murals, or we're working hard on trying to figure out a policy that we can create. So what kind of specific strategies do you have for getting the community involved? And also, how have you been able to get the institutional and or government support for doing your work?
So I'd have to say networking, relationship building, and collaboration. And just growing up in San Bernardino, I've been able to build a huge network. You know, a lot of them are my really good friends, and we bring in our friends, and then their friends, their family. So it's really grassroots, though. Like you were saying, getting the word out there, using social media. And so our group's not all about the arts. We're just about culture in general, and part of that is civic engagement. And so through our work in civic engagement, we got to know our politicians, and we got to know the people who have the power to make those decisions. We don't have an ordinance right now, so it was free game. One of our other people, she has a lawyer friend, so they did all the background before we even started painting murals.
So the ordinance, you're talking about an ordinance to paint murals in the city is what's lacking. Yeah.
Yeah, and right now we are in the talks, the Art Commission, Dottie right there, Barbara, and so we're figuring all that stuff out right now. But yeah, it's just putting the word out there, building those networks, building the relationships, you know, getting to know people, and people are more than willing to collaborate. A lot of people want to, you know, be involved in something good, and that's positive.
Yeah, that's great. And so, Johanna, what about with you? Do you have specific strategies for getting the community involved in the works or for generating interest? And or if you could also address how you possibly gotten some institutional government support for that?
Oh, sure. I'm a big believer, this took me a long time to figure out, but I'm a big believer in trusting the art itself to promote itself. So something Josiah said really resonated with me, which is when people see children performing and singing, then they see the effectiveness of doing the arts with kids. So I've traditionally just relied on time and slave labor. I have students at my beck and call, and I make them do things. And then once they started having a repertoire and we started having personal relationships, as we were saying, with people, we get asked back to do things all the time. So I have one more dumb anecdote, if you want to hear a dumb anecdote.
Sure.
Okay. Every Halloween for the past 15 years, I've been doing a puppet show on my porch in Pomona. So this is right back to Pomona. Over the course of 15 years, my audience has grown from about 70 kids, maybe. And the last time I did the show, after 15 consecutive years, there were 3,500 children who had been on my lawn. I work in San Bernardino, but the whole point is, over that time, it's now become a thing. And it's a thing by word of mouth entirely. It's something that made me Costco famous. I was buying lots of candy, and everyone's like, "Why are you buying so much candy?" "You're the puppet lady." And yeah. But it actually costs me money at this point, which I think is also very funny. But it's a great way to serve the community, but also like enjoy the community. You know, I love it. It's my favorite time of year. It's my favorite thing that I do.
That's great.
And so with the institutions and getting the government support, I would also say putting together a really good proposal, having a really good vision and being able to sell your vision. And the best way is to, take photos of the past things you've done, have video, have that to show so you can show really how you're affecting the lives. Like you're saying, you got to show these politicians that art can change the kids' lives, can change our community's lives, and that's how you muster the support.
And I think, I think one of the things that Kim said there about giving a voice seems to be a really huge part of this, where people feel like all of a sudden there's a conduit, whether you're out there actually painting a mural in the area and getting people to do it, or doing the puppet show and getting the music, or in fact creating these resources for people to actually see what their history is that's really been buried or hidden or just completely unknown. One of my own personal strategies for being able to getting people to cooperate with me is I give photos away. That's what I do. I take pictures, and for my AIDS project, I always gave people pictures. And when I show up 2 weeks later for photographs and then ask people to sign a model release, it was very effective. And then they would hang those pictures in their house, and someone would come over and say, "Wow, where'd you get these cool pictures?" "Oh, well, there's this guy, and he wants to tell the stories about people with HIV." Word of mouth then happened like that. Same with the pro wrestlers. Some other photographers freak out because I give pictures away, and that's the currency you would normally think. For me, the print is not the currency, or the image isn't the currency. It's about that relationship that I'm developing, and then the privilege of being able to tell people stories a little bit. So. But I love what Kim said about giving people a voice, where, I think so often, we're working in our local communities and it seems very insular, and it is, and yet when you allow the community to take part in that, and let them see that we become sort of collaborators, and to be able to have something tangible. And also I think what Michael is touching on, this idea that we become more sophisticated and a little savvier. We understand that our sponsors need some way to prove that that money they gave you was used in some way, whether it be through a publication or through documentation or through podcasts or through performances. This is how we've demonstrated that, in fact, yes, we're contributing to the community, even though we know that already as artists, but we need to also be able to demonstrate it. Being a little savvy is really smart. Okay, next question. What made you want to move your work into the community, and what issues does your community-based artwork address? Kim, would you take that?
Well, the type of work I was doing in the 1990s was more personal narratives and that, and I had a really just break from that type of work, and I started to bring in my interest in environmental issues, and that's how the Salton Sea Project came about. And that just has been the driving force. I think, with climate change, there's so much that we need to do, and I just feel like this art is about activism for me. It's about communication in that, and so I just kept working on projects along those lines. Not to say that you can't bring the personal into a project. I think that is a good thing as well. That's dealing with, in issues of the environment and ecology and that.
Yes, and what about you, Josiah? What made you want to move your work into the community? You addressed it, of course, when you were talking about yourself, and that what particular issues does that community-based artwork address?
Well, I think my biggest drive to bring my work into the community was that I seen how profitable music was for me and my family. We came from a background where at the age of 18, we sold 500,000 records and outsold Titanic at the time. So you're talking about seeing that you can make $5 million with a family business, and then also seeing in the urban community that there's no positive peer role models that teach you how to go and become that entrepreneur. So after we seen that we were successful on our own, it just was kind of a no-brainer for me to go out and teach other musicians and other artists in my community how to do the same thing. In the arts, though, there's a saying that you pay to play, you know, and the game costs and it's to be sold, not told. And I wanted to break that barrier because I seen the struggles and pitfalls that we fell against where, I mean, learning that you can own your own royalties through ASCAP for $75, right? And you got this manager that's telling you, no, sign to my publishing agency, and you got me for the rest of your life that has to pay your check. Well, once I learned that that's not true, I said, man, I got to go out and spread the word to my fellow musicians because people were getting robbed. And that is what we basically started off of. It's just teaching kids music, how to own their publishing, how to own your royalties, how to own your own creation. And then it just evolved and became this robust after-school program after that.
Beautiful, yeah. What about you then, Johanna? I mean, I guess, of course, if you, as a performance artist, you obviously, I guess it's obvious that you need the community. That you need to be out there.
I've never not.
Yeah, right? How do you do it?
I mean, unless I'm going to stand here and do stand-up or something, which I wouldn't do, but it's, but then I would, if I didn't have an audience, I wouldn't have a show. So, no, it's inherent to theater that we have to be involved.
Can you briefly address what issues your community-based artwork sort of addresses?
There isn't an issue that we haven't addressed yet. I don't think anything's off the table. That's how we roll as a department.
Great. What about you then, Michael? What made you want to move your work into the community?
So just growing up in San Bernardino, you know, just seeing the deterioration of the city. I grew up during the time before the bankruptcy. I just got out of high school and I was in college when the bankruptcy hit. So I was a little, you know, pissed off being a young person with nothing to do in our city. You know, you have to drive out of our city to have any fun in a nightlife or anything like that. So it's like the high crime rates are coming because of those problems and those issues. But growing up there, you know, seeing all the talent, knowing so many people that painted and did, you know, art and loved art, just trying to create those opportunities for us. And then, you know, through my journey, meeting older artists who are already really talented, but they had like one little spot that was like hidden behind a church. They had all this like, you know, characters, graffiti burners, all this like nice, really nice art that I really liked. And I was like, how can they get murals? You know, how could they express those in the community that they've grown up in? And then also, how can we learn from them as young people? They don't really have that opportunity to mentor. And so my main target was always the graffiti crews and the gangs, because we have a lot of that going on in our city, and a lot of them are bumping heads. And how can we, you know, stop that? How can we stop the violence? And then that's one of our themes was unity. How can we bring people together, you know, bring peace between them? How can we bring back hope? And I think part of the hope is, you know, having opportunities for them to participate in. And then, yeah, that's really what drove me was how can we create those opportunities, allow them to paint some legal walls, you know, and allow them to collaborate so they don't have to, you know, they're older, their OGs can come together and stop the violence and, you know, keep it from getting so out of hand. And then we don't have to pay so much money to our police because if you know San Bernardino, most of our budget goes to our police and fire. So we can create more programs if we stop the violence on our own, and we can eventually have a flourishing art scene there. And that's about it for now.
Long-term thinking on this guy's part. He's like 20-some years old. He's thinking long-term. That's beautiful. And, you know, part of my own motivations are both sometimes personal and then other times part of the community, like with my swap meet pictures right now. You drive down San Bernardino on a Sunday morning going to the swap meet and you think the town is deserted. You know, it kills me. I see, you know, stray dogs. I want to pick up everyone. I see stray homeless people. I want to stop and give everybody money. I see prostitutes. I want to stop and, you know, see what I could do for, you know, I'm a do-gooder, right? Like most of us all. But what happens is then you show at the National Orange Show, you see this flourishing entrepreneurial spirit that's happening with families, and it's just this beautiful exchange, and it's super friendly, and you just think, this is what San Bernardino is about. It's not, you know, of course the LA Times just wrote those recent articles that really annoyed me, but I have to say, there was no lies. They didn't tell lies, they just of course focused on the negative, and so part of what my work is, while not avoiding that, is I want to be focusing on the thing that I see and love about this city. So, you know, we have these personal issues that drive us, one is to go out into the community. We have altruistic issues that want to make us, you want to go out and do something for people and help them, as well as I think there's some historical issues too, you know, recording, what is this place like? What makes it special? So I think though we all have numerous reasons for wanting to go out into the community, there's certainly a few things that tie them together, and one of it is kind of getting out of being more than just about me. It's about us, it's about community and about unity. We all strive for our works to have a positive impact on our community and even hope for a transformational effect. I suspect all of us are optimists, a bit altruistic, and hope to create a better world. Please tell us how your artworks and involvement in the community have had a positive effect, or maybe they didn't, or how you haven't been able to determine that. Josiah, can you address that?
Well, yeah, the one that came to mind of a positive effect was our Changing Life Showcase. This was an idea of us. I took John Lennon concept of when they created the tour bus and created a mobile tour bus and toured around, and said, how can I create that to go around all these schools? And Moreno Valley was the first school district to take part in it. And we created a 21-week program that's basically a Changing Life Showcase, where we showcase all these K through 12 talents, music, art, dancing, all these things. And here, you know, I'm thinking, oh, it's just a showcase, but the White House awarded us for that and named us one of the top agencies for women in the kids' future. So that was one of the main ones that kind of just took point. Our art project, like you said, when we brought murals to the community center, we just had a vision of painting all the musicians that had some impactful moment into the arts. And I was painting this mural, I seen how many kids just drew to the art, and that's what caused us to create Art Changing Lives as well. And so now those artists, they're designing posters for National Philanthropy Month, designing posters for CASA, Coordinating Special Advocates, and it's grown now to where we're a national model that's going to Brazil, Haiti, now Nassau, Bahamas, and continuing to grow. So
nice.
I mean, it's just a movement that's going to take its own wings.
So, and Kim, I'd love to know how you've been able to see what sort of impact the types of work that you've been doing, whether they've been positive, or can you even tell? Can you address that?
Well, you know, you can look at web stats and things like that, but I think the best thing is when people actually contact you directly, take you aside and say, you know, this has had an impact on, you know, how I see the world now. You know, I didn't understand this and now I do, or, you know, this has really helped to share my story and thank you for doing so. So it's a little bit different with the type of projects I have. But, you know, we did with Invisible 5, we had a couple university programs, UC Davis. They actually have a program that they used Invisible 5 as a teaching aid for teaching community activists. It was like this kind of model for them, and everyone was required to listen to this. And so we thought, well, if we must have done good research, and if the university is looking at this as this kind of tool. So those types of things are really great, but I think it's harder to, you know, figure those things out in terms of sort of the technical kind of stats and things. The projects I do are usually, they're funded projects. I write grants, and that Cal Humanities has supported 3 projects now. They do have requirements for you to involve the audience at the closure of the project, and so, you know, that you can put out, have the audience answer a series of questions and things like that to tally. So that's one way. But I don't know how effective that is. I think the more personal one-on-one conversations are what I prefer.
Yeah, and I would also think in the scope of history, what you're doing is important. It's one of the things, for all of us as artists, we have various kinds of strategies and we have various kinds of issues and we have various goals for what our work can do, what kind of impact can my work have out there. And I think in your particular case, this is an incredibly valuable archive that you've created.
Yeah, and I want to say the reason I choose the web to disseminate this work, that's the primary way that I do so, is because it's archived and it's free, it's accessible, and it just builds upon itself as people share that. So, there's always a way to access that no matter where you can be remote. So I think for me, moving the work onto an online platform is a really great thing to have, a presence. I think everyone needs to make sure that they put time and energy and money into developing a web presence for their project, because that's another way to access.
Yes, definitely. What about you then, Johanna? How have you been able to see what the positive or the negative impact, or can you tell? Or?
I think my entire career is a testament to thinking it's a positive thing. I've devoted my whole life to this, but it's also, I have to say, because of the connection with children and education, what I do is messy. It's not always accessible. It's not always clear what's happening. I've tried. I wrote a grant for the NEA to do puppetry education, mostly to try to figure out how do we assess puppetry? How do we find out what kids are learning? And so I had all this data about puppetry, but what meant more to me is when I found out, one of the parents told me later, she's like, oh yeah, my little girl did your camp with you and decided to stay in school. Just stuff like that, that's what's meaningful to me. And I have to, I don't know, I feel like I'm one of the last people that's just resisting the quantification of that information. I kind of don't think we should. Yeah.
And what about you then, Michael? I guess in some way we can see it. We drive by Seacom Park and we see these incredible murals you've made, but are there other ways as well besides the visuals that you've left behind?
Yeah, well, I would agree with her. You can't really, measure it. But being there, painting the murals throughout the community and just meeting all sorts of people through the process and all different types of communities. And that's one of the things with the unity. We have so many communities in San Bernardino. So us painting in all these different parts of San Bernardino, you meet different people, different gangs or different crews. And so it's really interesting to see that, and then also just the community nearby. A lot of them, they love the art, and they just say, it's awesome that we're finally doing something positive. Of course, there's a few negative people that, detest it, and the positives always outweigh the negatives, though. It's always 10-1. So I think, it's really hard to measure it. For me, though, trying to work with the gangs and the crews, I've been able to get 2 of the OG crews from our city to actually come together, and they painted together at Secum, and now they're on talking terms. They're hopefully going to hang out more. I probably have to put together some more, events to get them together, but it's a stepping stone for me and to the future I'm trying to see in the city. Bridging those gaps between all the violence that's been going on.
Yeah, that's really interesting, but I think this is a challenge, the idea that how can we, and again, Johanna and I are university professors, and of course one of the big mandates is us to be able to verify and demonstrate that our students are learning things, and she like I get kind of grumbly about it. It's it's obvious and all that, and yet we do understand we're working in the real world, where a lot of people do not understand anything about what artists do. They think we're nuts. We spend our own money to go out there and do things that seem to have possibly dubious and or very specific impact. And so I think it really behooves us to start to develop some kind of strategies of how we can start to, quantify and qualify the impact that we have. And so that I think it's a big challenge, but it's one I think that we as artists and we as art groups in the Inland Empire need to start working towards that so that we can be able to demonstrate that as best we can do to the people, both in our community as well as any sponsors.
And with that, I would just say, documenting it, like we said before, like you're saying, her coming and telling you that if you document that, those little documentations of just people expressing their gratitude, expressing why they love the project, it's the best thing. So whenever you're doing a project, make sure you have a camera on you, you know, make sure you can video record it, your phone, whatever you have.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I did have those thank you letters up from the kids and stuff like that. So I mean, so it's not like I don't do it. It's just that I'm also part of a national organization, the American Alliance for Theater and Education. And one of the things we've been talking about is that the research is there, the arts work, we have it. You know what I mean? So it's more a question of getting those things that are already confirmed and already research-based and disseminating them instead of having to do it ourselves so we can get back to what we do best. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes total. Go ahead, Josiah.
Yeah, and what we did, because we always get stumped with that question, how can you show that you're pushing the needle? And we were gracious enough to have Claremont University come on and do like a pre and post quasi-nova study for us that shows that the art does embrace these kids' movement, their ability to speak, their grammar. Not only that, their GPA, we're studying now their attendance. And that's being that we're now working with the school district that we could capture all this information. So those are the partners and collaborators that we allow to check the numbers. I just say, give it to me in layman terms and just keep letting me do the work.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's enough for myself, and it's like most of my artwork I do alone. Mostly, with the exception of this most recent collaborations I've had with Juan Delgado, the poet. It's mostly about me doing something alone, and so oftentimes I've sort of ignored. I mean, you always feel there's a strong impact, you got a publication or whatever, but it's always seems like I've never really been able to get a handle on it, and yet I can clearly see what an important thing that is. Do we have just a couple of minutes still? I think just a couple. So could we open that up to any questions? Yes, sir. You have a question? You can holler it, or is there a microphone?
Yes, my name is Miguel Vasquez. I'm a planner. I work for a Department of Public Health, and I'm also an artist. And I wanted to ask if each one of you could share your definition of placemaking, since this is the session title.
Thank you. Our definition of placemaking. Could maybe just one person take that? Placemaking? You know?
Creative placemaking,
There we
I
go.
think you're going off of, is building like an area where everyone's welcome, no matter your religion, gender, and just opening up the arms for people to do what they love. And I want to go off what Joanna said. You got to, I think Kim said that, you got to know your community. And if you're working in that community, I think doing some surveys and seeing what the people really want in that community is healthy. Because we can always say we know what they want, but you got to ask the kids and the parents.
And that I think is great. And also getting back to what Kim said about doing research, you know, really knowing what it is you're getting involved in. And that the community, obviously, when you're around people and they realize that you've actually known, that you've actually researched what's going on here, that obviously is a huge positive. Could we get one more question real quick and then we can wrap it up? Yeah, thank you.
I would like to know how the parents of the children that you are all affecting, how do you involve them without them knowing it or on purpose they're knowing it?
How do we involve the children and their parents with maybe the parents not necessarily knowing it?
How do you involve the parents?
How do you involve the parents to it? Yeah. Johanna, what about you? Do you want to go with it?
I'm smiling because I'm thinking of the camp I did for the National Endowment for the Arts. A lot of the parents wanted to just hang around and watch what their kids were doing. So a lot of what I do as an educator is keep parents from doing things for their children. Allowing them to step back and let their child just be themselves. And I've seen amazing things happen, especially with kids with disabilities, when their parents are used to like rescuing them and when they have to step back. But I also love involving entire families in things. That's why almost all the work I do is family accessible. So I love, one of my favorite audience members is a baby in arms. You would be surprised at what a 1-year-old is experiencing when they see a theater performance. It really is quite incredible in terms of recent brain research. So that's just one thing you can do, is include families in the performing.
Anybody else have specific ways they involve parents in that?
I now have where our parents have to commit to 12 hours of community service with our programs so that it creates some sort of parent engagement. And then we have showcases, which is the Changing Lives Showcase, where it's like a red carpet extravaganza and everything is free for them. We get them all dolled up, dressed to impress, and bring the families to an open theater to see their children perform. And I think that's the biggest, something free, something where they don't have to come out of pocket. Because in most of the pockets we're working in are the communities, they're low income, and they never experience anything where they have to really get dressed up or dolled up. So I think that was our biggest piece.
And for me, one of the things is I bribe people. I give them photographs. I'm not kidding. At the Anderson School, I give them photographs, at which then the parents, and if the parents are there, I take pictures of them. I'm giving out my business card saying, contact me, I'll send you a picture. And of course, the kind of feedback I get when I do that are these very touching emails like, oh my God, we never had such a nice picture of Jose and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's just the bribe and give them a picture like that. Good, well, I think our time is up, and then, right, Kathy?
Here I am.
Oh, thank you.
What are you doing?
Well, thank you so much, everybody, and thanks so much for the panel for the excellent comments.
Thank you for those great connections, the idea of reciprocity, the idea that we are not suppliants, but we are resources when we come to the table as artists. That was so beautifully articulated by all of our panelists here today. Now, I know you've been looking at this set and thinking, how did Arts Connection afford that with California Arts Council money? Well, in fact, we were fortunate enough to be here on the set for Elephant and Piggies, We're in a Play. So if you want to come and see what this really does, you should come back October 10th through 25th to see the Main Street Theater Company production, and we are so glad that they have allowed us to be in their set, because all of us theater folks know what that means. That means they're not here rehearsing today because we're using their space. So please take advantage of that. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and before we do that, at 3:30, we're going to reconvene on the other side of this building. There are 3 breakout rooms set up. Each is labeled. James Rojas will be leading Art Making as City Making, an interactive workshop. Is James in the house? Are you sitting
He's here, he went to...
He's here, he went to go set the room. Leslie Elwood is leading Technology to Temporary Pursuits in Public Art. Is she in the room? And Daniel Foster is Making Greater Impact, and Daniel's sitting right here. So you will see the 3 rooms labeled. Our closing remarks will take place in the second room 2, in the middle room. We'll just grab ourselves back together there for really quick closing remarks. And at the end of the day, there is a no-host happy hour at Dale Brothers Brewery, 2120 Porterfield Way, Upland, California, 91786. And that's in your program. And I want to thank, as we leave this space, I want to offer a very special thank you to the technical crew that has been providing all of the technical support. Mad claps. You guys are amazing, and we thank you. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much.